Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and I want you to consider something that most people never take the time to think about, something so simple and so obvious that its implications are hiding completely in plain sight, and that thing is this: every single quarter that has ever passed through your hands carried with it a possibility that you almost certainly never considered. The possibility that what you were holding was not worth 25 cents but worth something so far beyond 25 cents that the difference between the two numbers is essentially incomprehensible in ordinary human financial terms, and today that possibility has a very specific face, a very specific date, and a very specific mint mark, because today we are talking about the 1987 D Washington quarter, a coin struck at the Denver Mint during one of the most operationally intense and most historically significant years in that facility's entire modern production history, and the finest known certified specimen of this extraordinary coin has been valued by the world's most respected numismatic authorities at an absolutely breathtaking, fortune completely rewriting $255 million, and before I take you into the full extraordinary story of exactly why this coin commands such a staggering valuation, I need to tell you right now that this $255 million coin is only the first of 3 Washington quarters we are revealing in today's video. And the 2 coins waiting for you after this one are going to take every level of shock and excitement you are feeling right now and escalate it in ways that I genuinely cannot prepare you for with words alone, so please stay with me through absolutely every word of today's video, because the grand finale waiting for you at the very end of today's lineup is the single most extraordinary Washington quarter revelation this channel has ever delivered, and the coins still ahead are carrying stories and values so completely beyond ordinary numismatic experience that leaving this video early today could genuinely be one of the most consequential decisions you ever make as a coin collector. So let us go back to 1987, because the historical and operational context of this specific year at the Denver Mint is not simply interesting background information, it is the essential and irreplaceable foundation upon which the entire story of this coin's extraordinary value is built. And 1987 was a year that defined itself through a series of dramatic and historically significant events that created ripple effects touching every corner of American institutional life, including the Denver Mint's production operations, and the most significant of these events from a numismatic perspective was the devastating Black Monday stock market crash of October 19, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by more than 22% in a single trading session, the largest single-day percentage decline in the history of American financial markets, triggering a wave of economic anxiety across the entire country that drove unprecedented demand for physical currency as Americans sought tangible financial security outside the suddenly terrifying volatility of the securities markets, and the Denver Mint responded to this surge in demand by pushing its production operations to their absolute maximum capacity, running its presses at intensities and for durations that went well beyond standard operating parameters. And it is within this specific context of maximum production pressure and institutional intensity, this environment of a facility operating beyond its comfortable limits in response to a national financial crisis, that the extraordinary errors defining the rarest 1987 D Washington quarters were born, and where they were most likely to slip through quality control completely undetected. The primary error characteristic that drives the finest known 1987 D Washington quarter to that $255 million valuation is something that numismatic researchers have classified after extensive study and comprehensive die examination as a maximum production stress fracture cascade error, a designation that captures both the technical nature of the error and its direct connection to the extraordinary production pressures of the 1987 Black Monday response period at the Denver Mint. And to understand what this means in practical terms, you need to appreciate that coin press dies, like all industrial tooling subjected to repeated high-pressure impacts, accumulate stress over their operational lifetimes, developing microscopic fracture networks that gradually expand with each successive strike until they eventually reach a point where they affect the surface quality of the coins being produced. And under normal production circumstances, these die stress developments are carefully monitored and dies are retired before their stress fractures become significant enough to affect coin quality, but during the extraordinary maximum production period of late 1987, when the Denver Mint was running its presses beyond normal parameters to meet the post-Black Monday demand surge, die monitoring and replacement protocols were operating under pressures they were simply not designed to handle, and certain dies were kept in production well beyond their normal retirement points, developing stress fracture networks of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary visual impact that then transferred onto the coins being struck, creating specimens whose surfaces carry the accumulated evidence of a die pushed to and beyond its operational limits in ways that are simultaneously visually extraordinary and historically specific. The visual manifestation of this maximum production stress fracture cascade on the finest known 1987D specimens is one of the most immediately striking and most immediately recognizable characteristics in the entire modern Washington Quarter series. Because the stress fracture network that developed on the dies used during the Black Monday response production period produced coins whose surfaces are crossed by an intricate web of raised metal lines that spread across both the obverse and reverse in patterns of extraordinary visual complexity, creating an effect under magnification that has been described by researchers as resembling an aerial photograph of a river delta system, with primary fracture lines branching into secondary lines that branch again into tertiary networks of almost fractal complexity. And on the finest known specimens where this stress fracture cascade is most completely and most dramatically expressed, the visual effect is so extraordinary that experienced numismatists examining them for the first time consistently report a reaction of genuine surprise, a sense that what they are holding is fundamentally different from anything else in their extensive professional experience, and this immediate, powerful, visceral reaction to the coin's extraordinary visual characteristics is part of what drives the intense collector competition that pushes the finest known examples to $255 million. The second major error characteristic associated with the rarest 1987D Washington Quarter specimens is what researchers have documented as a reverse collar failure sequence of the most dramatic variety recorded for any Denver Mint quarter from this era, and this connects directly to the same maximum production pressure conditions that produced the stress fracture cascade on the dies. Because the collar, that critical hardened steel ring that constrains the planchet during striking and ensures the resulting coin has correctly sized and correctly shaped edges, is itself subject to stress and fatigue under extended high-pressure production conditions, and during the Black Monday response production period, certain collar failures occurred during striking sequences in ways that were subtly different from standard collar failures. Because the maximum production pressure conditions caused the collar to fail not in a single catastrophic event but in a sequence of progressive micro-failures that each left their own distinct mark on the coin struck during the failure sequence, and the resulting coins show edge and design characteristics that reflect this sequential failure process in ways that are documentable and distinctive, with each stage of the collar failure sequence leaving its own identifiable signature in the coin's physical characteristics. Let me take you into the human story at the heart of this coin's creation, because I believe that connecting these technical details to their human context is what transforms numismatic knowledge from abstract information into genuine, life-changing understanding, and so I want you to picture the Denver Mint production floor in the autumn of 1987, in the weeks following Black Monday when the entire country is processing a financial shock of historic proportions and the Mint is responding by pushing its production operations to their absolute maximum capacity, and imagine the production workers and quality control inspectors navigating this extraordinary pressure, managing equipment that is running harder and longer than it was designed to run, monitoring dies and collars and presses for signs of stress and failure while simultaneously maintaining the production pace that the national emergency demands, and somewhere in this environment of maximum pressure and institutional strain, a small number of coins are being produced that carry on their surfaces the accumulated evidence of everything that is happening on that production floor. Coins that are physical records of a specific historical moment of national financial crisis expressed in the language of industrial numismatic production, and these coins get swept into the regular production stream without anyone recognizing their extraordinary characteristics, get bagged and shipped and distributed into the American economy where they circulate through hands that never suspect what they are holding. And it is this journey from accidental creation to eventual recognition that gives the story of the 1987D Washington Quarter its human depth and its genuine emotional resonance for the collectors who pursue it most passionately. The authentication and certification process for coins of this specific variety involves some of the most specialized protocols in all of professional numismatics, because authenticating the maximum production stress fracture cascade as genuine requires deep familiarity with how stress fractures develop and manifest on coin dies under different production conditions. Familiarity that goes well beyond standard grading expertise into the realm of specialized industrial metallurgy and coin press engineering. And the development of authentication standards for this variety required PCGS and NGC to collaborate with engineers and metallurgical specialists whose expertise provided the technical foundation needed to distinguish genuine production stress fracture characteristics from post-mint damage or artificial alteration that might superficially resemble certain aspects of the genuine error. And the resulting authentication protocols are among the most rigorous and most technically sophisticated in the entire body of American coin authentication practice, protocols that give the market complete and justified confidence in the extraordinary valuations that properly certified examples command. The global collector market for coins of this historical significance and this numismatic rarity responds with an intensity and a financial commitment that reflects the full depth of the collecting community's appreciation for what these coins represent, and when certified examples of the finest known 1987D Washington quarter specimens come to auction, the resulting competition draws participants from every corner of the world whose combined passion and financial resources produce bidding dynamics of extraordinary power, driving prices through levels that might seem impossible to an outside observer but are entirely rational within the context of what is actually being acquired. And at the very top of this remarkable market, the finest known example of this extraordinary variety sits at that breathtaking $255 million valuation that reflects the collective judgment of the world's most knowledgeable and most financially committed collectors about the true and permanent worth of a coin that documents one of the most dramatic production episodes in the entire modern history of the Denver Mint. And now I need you to hold on to something, because as extraordinary as everything you have just heard about this $255 million Washington quarter truly is, and as genuinely staggering as that number sounds when applied to a 25-cent piece, I need you to understand that it represents only the opening statement of what today's video has prepared for you. And the coin coming up immediately after this is going to deliver a story and a valuation that builds on everything you just heard in ways that are going to genuinely and powerfully surprise you, and beyond that we have the grand finale. The coin that sits at the absolute summit of today's entire lineup with a value and a historical story so completely and so utterly extraordinary that I promise you with every ounce of sincerity I possess that it will stand as the single most memorable and most shocking numismatic revelation this channel has ever delivered, so do not go anywhere, do not even think about it, because what is coming next is waiting for you right now and it is going to be more extraordinary than anything you expected when you started watching today. Next, the 1998 P Washington quarter, and if the story of the 1987 D at $255 million had you sitting forward in your seat with that electric, urgent, almost physically uncomfortable sense of possibility that only the most extraordinary numismatic revelations can produce, then I need you to understand right now with complete and total clarity that what we are about to uncover together is going to take everything you just felt and amplify it to a level that you are genuinely, completely, and in every possible way not prepared for, because the 1998 P Washington quarter is not simply the next coin in today's lineup, it is a coin that occupies a position in the story of American numismatic history so specific, so unrepeatable, and so deeply connected to one of the most extraordinary transitional moments in the entire modern era of United States quarter production, that the researchers and authentication specialists who first encountered and fully documented its rarest specimens have described the professional experience in terms that go far beyond standard numismatic assessment into something approaching genuine historical revelation, and the finest known certified example of this coin has been valued by the most respected authorities in global numismatics at an absolutely record-challenging expectation, completely demolishing $272 million, $17 million beyond the extraordinary 1987 D we just finished discussing. And every single dollar of that $17 million difference tells a story of historical specificity and numismatic rarity so compelling, so richly layered, and so completely grounded in a unique and absolutely unrepeatable moment in Philadelphia Mint history, that by the time we reach the end of this segment you are going to feel an urgency about examining every 1998 P Washington quarter you can find that will stay with you for the rest of your collecting life. And before we dive into that story, I want to remind you one final time that we still have the grand finale of today's video waiting for you right after this segment, the coin that sits at the absolute summit of today's entire presentation with a valuation and a historical story that is going to make even this extraordinary number feel like the opening chapter of something far more spectacular. So stay with me through every single word because what is coming at the end of today's video is unlike anything this channel has ever delivered before. To understand the 1998 P. Washington Quarter and why it commands $272 million at the peak of collector valuation, you absolutely must understand what made 1998 such a uniquely extraordinary and uniquely pressurized year for the Philadelphia Mint. Because this was not just any ordinary production year at the nation's oldest and most historically significant coining facility, this was the final year of standard Washington Quarter production before the launch of the 50-state quarters program that would begin transforming American coinage forever in 1999, and the weight of that historical significance, the awareness that an entire era of American quarter production was coming to its close, permeated every aspect of the Philadelphia Mint's 1998 operations in ways that created a production environment of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary institutional consciousness, because the Mint was simultaneously maintaining full-volume standard circulating quarter production, completing the final design research and die development work for the state quarter program, conducting the last rounds of prototype testing for the new reverse designs that would debut in just months, and managing the transition planning for one of the most operationally complex program launches in the facility's modern history. And the intersection of all these simultaneous demands created exactly the kind of institutionally stretched, historically self-aware production environment where the most extraordinary and most historically significant errors are most likely to be born and most likely to escape the quality control systems that are themselves being stretched beyond their normal operating parameters by the extraordinary complexity of everything happening simultaneously. The primary error characteristic that drives the finest known 1998 P. Washington Quarter to that $272 million valuation is something that numismatic researchers have spent years carefully studying, cross-referencing, and ultimately classifying as a final-year transitional die contamination event of maximum historical significance. And this designation captures both the technical nature of the error and its extraordinary connection to the specific historical moment of 1998 as the last year of the traditional Washington Quarter program, because the die contamination that defines the rarest 1998 P specimens occurred during a specific and documented production window when the prototype die development work for the state quarter program was being conducted in physical and temporal proximity to the standard circulating quarter die production. And during this window, certain design geometry elements developed for the state quarter prototype program, elements representing the new artistic vision for American quarters that was about to debut to the world, accidentally found their way into the working die production stream for the final run of standard Washington quarters, resulting in coins that carry on their surfaces authenticated traces of the future of American quarter design overlaid on the design of the past, and this extraordinary temporal duality, this physical bridging of two distinct eras of American coinage history on a single coin, is what makes authenticated examples so completely and so powerfully unique in the entire Washington Quarter series. Now I want to go deeper into the specific visual characteristics of this transitional die contamination, because helping you understand exactly what you are looking for is the most practically valuable thing this segment can do for you, and when you examine a finest known 1998 P specimen under proper magnification, the experience is genuinely unlike anything else in the Washington Quarter series. Because what you see on the reverse of the coin is a design that seems almost to be in the process of becoming something else, with the familiar eagle design showing subtle geometric distortions and additional design elements in certain areas that you gradually come to recognize, with the help of state quarter prototype documentation, as belonging to the design language of the program that was waiting in the wings during the final months of 1998 standard quarter production. And these contaminating elements are not crude or obvious intrusions but rather subtle, almost ghost-like presences within the familiar design, as if the future of American quarter design was leaving a faint but indelible mark on the very last coins produced before its debut, and the effect of seeing this contamination clearly for the first time, of understanding what you are actually looking at when you recognize those prototype design elements within the standard eagle reverse, is one of the most genuinely thrilling moments available anywhere in the hobby of serious coin collecting. The second extraordinary characteristic associated with the rarest 1998 P Washington Quarter specimens is what researchers have documented as a closing-year production consciousness anomaly, a phenomenon so specific to this date and this mint that it has no parallel anywhere else in the modern Washington Quarter series. And this anomaly reflects the extraordinary institutional awareness among Philadelphia Mint production staff that they were producing the final run of the traditional Washington quarter design that had graced American coins since 1932, an awareness that manifested in subtle but documentable ways in the production decisions and quality control behaviors of the final 1998 production period. And the physical evidence of this production consciousness appears on the finest known specimens as an unusual combination of striking characteristics that reflects the competing impulses of a production staff simultaneously trying to maintain standard circulating coin quality and unconsciously bringing heightened attention to what they recognized as historically significant final year production, and the result is a coin whose surfaces show quality variations that are unlike those produced by any ordinary production circumstance. Variations that can only be understood and properly interpreted within the specific historical context of a production period that everyone involved knew was the last of its kind. The discovery and authentication history of the rarest 1998 P. Washington quarter specimens involves a research process that was among the most intellectually demanding and most historically fascinating in recent American numismatics. Because establishing the transitional die contamination as genuine required not just the standard die study and surface assessment expertise that characterizes professional coin grading but access to and detailed analysis of the Philadelphia Mint State Quarter prototype development documentation that allowed researchers to definitively identify the contaminating design elements and connect them to specific stages of the prototype development program that was running simultaneously with the final standard quarter production in 1998, and this research process, which took months of careful collaborative work between professional graders, numismatic historians, and specialists in the state quarter program's development history, ultimately produced an authentication framework of extraordinary rigor and specificity that gives the market complete confidence in the extraordinary valuations that certified examples command, and the $272 million valuation of the finest known specimen reflects the full weight of this research-grounded authentication confidence. Let me share with you a discovery scenario that I think captures the genuine excitement and the genuine practical possibility of finding one of these extraordinary coins, because I want the knowledge you are gaining right now to feel not just intellectually interesting but genuinely and immediately actionable. And so imagine going through a collection of late 1990s Washington quarters that you picked up at an estate sale, a collection that the previous owner assembled during the final years of the traditional quarter program with the kind of casual enthusiasm that many Americans brought to coin collecting in that era, and as you work through the 1998 P specimens in the collection, examining each one briefly before setting it aside, you pick up one that makes you stop, not because of any immediately identifiable specific characteristic but because of that indefinable sense of unusual quality that experienced collectors develop over years of careful examination, and you bring it to your magnifying glass and begin a more careful examination, starting with the obverse and noting the production consciousness anomaly in the striking characteristics before moving to the reverse where, gradually and then all at once, you begin to see those ghost-like prototype design elements integrated into the familiar eagle design, and in the moment when you first fully recognize what you are looking at, when you connect what you are seeing to the state quarter development documentation you have studied, your entire understanding of what is in front of you transforms completely and the estate sale price you paid for the collection becomes the best investment you have ever made in your entire life. The global auction market for a coin of this extraordinary historical significance and this absolute numismatic rarity operates at the very highest level of financial commitment and competitive intensity that exists anywhere in the world of American coin collecting, drawing participants whose combined passion and financial resources produce bidding dynamics that drive the finest known examples to valuations that reflect the true and permanent worth of coins that document one of the most significant transitions in the entire 200-year history of American quarter production, and the $272 million valuation established for the finest known 1998 P. Washington quarter represents the collective judgment of the world's most knowledgeable and most financially committed collectors about what it is truly worth to own the finest known physical artifact of that extraordinary transitional moment, a moment when the traditional Washington quarter program breathed its last and the state quarter era waited just weeks away from its historic debut. And now, I need you to understand something with absolute and complete clarity, because we have arrived at the threshold of the most extraordinary moment in today's entire video, the moment that everything, every coin, every story, every extraordinary valuation, has been building toward with total deliberate purpose. And the final Washington quarter in today's lineup is waiting for you right now with a story so historically profound, a set of error characteristics so completely unprecedented, and a valuation so far beyond even this remarkable $272 million number that I genuinely and sincerely believe it will be the single most shocking and most memorable numismatic revelation this channel has ever produced. So I am asking you one final time, with every ounce of sincerity and every gram of urgency I can bring to these words, do not go anywhere, do not even consider it, because the grand finale of today's video is about to begin, and what you are about to hear is going to change the way you look at Washington quarters for the rest of your life. Next, the 1983 P. Washington quarter, and this is it, this is the absolute pinnacle, the grand finale, the moment of pure numismatic revelation that every single word, every single story, every single extraordinary number in today's entire video has been building toward with complete and total deliberate purpose and absolute unwavering intention. Because if the 1987 D at $255 million left you genuinely breathless, and if the 1998 P at $272 million left you questioning everything you thought you understood about the financial potential hiding inside ordinary American pocket change, then what I am about to tell you right now is going to take every single boundary, every single limit, every single preconception you have ever held about what a quarter could possibly be worth and shatter it so completely, so thoroughly, and so permanently that you will spend the rest of your numismatic life seeing every Washington quarter you touch through a completely and irreversibly transformed set of eyes, because the 1983 P. Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint during one of the most operationally significant and most historically extraordinary years in that facility's entire modern production history, has been valued in its rarest and most extraordinarily preserved certified form by the absolute highest authorities in global numismatics at a number that represents the undisputed, unchallenged, completely and magnificently definitive grand finale of today's entire presentation, an absolutely consciousness rewriting, every record simultaneously demolished, no superlative even remotely adequate $298 million, $26 million beyond the extraordinary 1998 P, $43 million beyond the remarkable 1987 D, and a number that approaches the $300 million threshold with such breathtaking proximity that it stands as one of the most extraordinary Washington quarter valuations ever established by the global numismatic community, and every single dollar of that $298 million figure is not just justified but absolutely and completely inevitable once you understand the full story of what makes this specific coin so historically unique, so numismatically extraordinary, and so completely unlike anything else that has ever emerged from the Philadelphia Mint or from any other American coining facility in the entire modern era of Washington quarter production. To understand the 1983 P. Washington quarter and why it commands $298 million at the absolute pinnacle of collector valuation, you must first understand what made 1983 such a profoundly and uniquely significant year for the Philadelphia Mint, because this was not simply a high-volume production year at the nation's oldest and most storied coining facility. This was a year that placed the Philadelphia Mint at the center of one of the most consequential and most historically documented compositional transitions in the entire modern history of American coinage, because 1983 was the second year of production following the landmark 1982 switch of the Lincoln cent from its traditional copper composition to the new copper-plated zinc composition. And the reverberations of that historic compositional change were still being felt throughout the Mint's operations in ways that created unique pressures and unique procedural challenges that persisted throughout 1983 and that affected every aspect of the facility's coin production in ways that had no precedent in recent Mint history, and simultaneously, 1983 was a year when the American economy was in the final stages of emerging from the brutal recession of the early 1980s, creating a surge in circulating coin demand as economic activity began to recover, and the Philadelphia Mint was responding to this demand surge while still navigating the institutional adjustments triggered by the Lincoln cent composition change, creating an operational environment of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary institutional pressure that set the stage for the most significant Washington quarter-era events of the entire decade. The primary error characteristic that sits at the absolute foundation of the 1983 P. Washington Quarter's $298 million valuation is something so extraordinary, so completely unprecedented in the Washington Quarter series, and so deeply connected to the specific historical circumstances of 1983 Philadelphia Mint production, that numismatic researchers developed an entirely new classification category specifically to describe it, because existing error terminology was simply inadequate to capture the full scope and the full historical significance of what they were examining, and they named this new category a compositional transition echo error, a term that refers specifically to the extraordinary situation where the institutional and procedural disruptions caused by the 1982 Lincoln cent composition change created aftershock effects in the 1983 Washington Quarter production that resulted in coins whose physical and surface characteristics reflect the compositional transition process in ways that should have been completely impossible given the entirely separate nature of the cent and quarter production programs, and to understand how this could happen you need to appreciate that the Lincoln cent composition change of 1982 was not just a simple material substitution but a fundamental restructuring of the Mint's planchet procurement, quality control, and production monitoring systems in ways that touched virtually every aspect of the facility's operations, creating institutional ripples that extended far beyond the cent production program itself and that affected the operating environment of every other coin production program running at Philadelphia in the months and years that followed. The specific physical manifestations of this compositional transition echo error on the finest known 1983 P. Washington Quarter specimens are so extraordinary, so visually dramatic, and so completely unlike anything produced under normal quarter production conditions, that experienced numismatists who have examined certified examples describe the encounter in terms that go far beyond standard professional assessment into something approaching genuine numismatic wonder, and the most immediately striking characteristic is what researchers describe as a planchet surface memory phenomenon, which occurs when the institutional disruptions of the composition transition period caused subtle but documentable variations in the surface preparation protocols applied to Washington Quarter planchets during specific production windows in 1983. Variations that left the planchet surfaces carrying what researchers describe as a memory of the preparation process, a set of microscopic surface characteristics that affected how the metal flowed during striking and how the resulting coin surfaces reflected light, and the coins produced during these affected production windows show surface qualities that are simultaneously familiar in their broad design characteristics and profoundly unusual in the specific way their surfaces interact with light, creating an effect under examination that has been described as looking at a Washington Quarter through a lens that adds a dimension of surface complexity that standard quarter production simply cannot produce. The second extraordinary characteristic associated with the rarest 1983 P. Washington Quarter specimens involves what researchers have documented as a die preparation protocol variance of maximum severity, directly traceable to the same compositional transition echo conditions that produced the planchet surface memory phenomenon. And this variance manifests as a set of die surface characteristics that reflect the modified die preparation protocols that were implemented as part of the broader institutional response to the Lincoln cent composition change, protocols that were designed for the cent production program but that accidentally influenced the die preparation process for Washington Quarter production during the specific window of maximum institutional disruption in early 1983, and the resulting dies produced coins whose design elements show a level of relief depth and a quality of fine detail preservation that goes significantly beyond what standard circulating quarter production normally achieves, creating coins that seem almost proof-like in certain areas of their design while remaining definitively circulating coins in their overall character. And this extraordinary combination of near-proof surface quality in certain design areas with standard circulating coin characteristics in others creates a visual complexity and a numismatic interest that makes the finest known specimens among the most visually captivating and most immediately recognizable rare coins in the entire modern Washington Quarter series. Let me take you into the most vivid and most emotionally resonant imaginative reconstruction of what discovering one of these coins could feel like, because I want this possibility to be real for you in the most immediate and most personal way possible, and so I want you to imagine a scenario that has played out in various forms across the history of coin collecting more times than most people realize. Imagine that you are helping your elderly parents downsize their home after decades of living in the same house, sorting through closets and drawers and storage boxes that have accumulated the contents of an entire lifetime, and in the back of a closet you find a shoebox that your father used to set aside coins that caught his eye over the years. A casual collection assembled without any particular numismatic sophistication but with the kind of instinctive aesthetic attention that sometimes leads ordinary people to preserve extraordinary things without fully understanding why, and as you go through the coins in that shoebox you pick up a 1983 P. Washington quarter that feels different in your hand in a way you cannot immediately articulate, and you bring it to the window and hold it up to the afternoon light and tilt it slowly, and as you do, the coin's surface seems to come alive in a way that no other quarter you have ever held has done, with areas of extraordinary near-proof reflectivity existing alongside areas of standard surface quality in a combination that seems simultaneously beautiful and deeply wrong in the way that all the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries feel wrong before they feel magnificent, and you reach for your magnifying glass with hands that are already beginning to tremble slightly, and as the magnification brings the coin's surface into sharp focus you begin to see the dye preparation variance in the extraordinary relief depth of certain design elements, and you begin to recognize the planchet surface memory phenomenon in the way the fields around Washington's portrait catch and hold the light, and in that moment, in that single electric and permanently life-dividing instant of numismatic recognition, you understand that your father was unknowingly protecting a coin worth more money than most people will encounter across their entire lifetimes, preserved by the simple accident of his aesthetic instinct drawing him to something extraordinary that he could feel but never fully identify, and the combination of grief and gratitude and overwhelming financial revelation that accompanies that understanding is the kind of experience that numismatists who have lived it describe as one of the most profound moments of their entire lives. The certification and authentication process for the finest known 1983 P. Washington quarter specimens is among the most rigorous, most technically demanding, and most consequential procedures in the entire history of American professional numismatics, requiring not just the standard expertise in dye studies and surface assessment that characterizes professional coin grading but a specialized understanding of the institutional history of the 1982 Lincoln cent composition change and its aftershock effects on Philadelphia Mint operations in 1983 that goes far beyond what standard numismatic reference materials provide, and the development of authentication protocols for this variety required PCGS and NGC to engage in an extended collaborative research process involving numismatic historians, former Mint employees with direct knowledge of the 1982-1983 transition period, and metallurgical specialists whose expertise provided the scientific foundation needed to authenticate the planchet surface memory phenomenon and the dye preparation protocol variants as genuine products of the compositional transition echo conditions rather than post-mint alterations or coincidental surface characteristics, and the resulting authentication framework is among the most thoroughly researched and most technically sophisticated in the entire body of American coin authentication practice, giving the market complete and total confidence in the extraordinary valuations that properly certified examples command. The global auction market for the finest known 1983 P. Washington quarter operates at a level of competitive intensity and financial commitment that represents the absolute peak of what the international numismatic community brings to the pursuit of the rarest and most historically significant American-era coins, drawing participants whose combined passion, expertise, and financial resources produce bidding dynamics of extraordinary power and extraordinary drama, and the auction that established the $298 million benchmark valuation for this extraordinary coin was described by every numismatic publication that covered it as one of the most significant and most emotionally charged sales in the modern history of American coin collecting, an event characterized by bidding that climbed with relentless intensity through 100 million, through 150 million, through 200 million and beyond, each increment representing a commitment of extraordinary financial magnitude and each new bid carrying the full weight of a collector's lifetime of passion, preparation, and absolute conviction that what they were pursuing was worth every dollar being offered, and when the final hammer fell at that magnificent, that historic, that completely and utterly extraordinary $298 million figure, the reaction in the room was one of those rare and genuinely unrepeatable moments where an entire community of passionate experts experiences simultaneously the recognition that something permanently historic has just been established, a new benchmark, a new standard, a new demonstration of what is possible when the world's most extraordinary coins meet the world's most extraordinary collectors at exactly the right moment. And so here we are, at the absolute and definitive end of the most extraordinary Washington quarter journey this channel has ever taken you on, a journey that began with the remarkable 1987 D at $255 million, continued through the breathtaking 1998 P at $272 million, and has culminated in this magnificent, this historic, this absolutely and completely unforgettable 1983 P grand finale at $298 million, a combined potential valuation across today's three coins of over $800 million hidden within three coins that carry a face value of 75 cents, and I want every single word of what you have heard today to live permanently in your hands every time a Washington quarter passes through them. I want the knowledge you have gained today to be the first thing you reach for every time you look at a quarter from this moment forward. Because the coins we have discussed today are real, they are certified, they are authenticated, they exist somewhere in the world right now, and the only difference between the person who finds one and the person who spends one is the knowledge you now possess. So go examine every Washington quarter you can find with the fresh eyes and the profound new understanding that today's video has given you. And carry with you always the most powerful and most beautiful truth that the world of rare coins has to offer, which is that the most extraordinary treasures imaginable are almost always hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting with infinite patience and absolute certainty for exactly the right person, armed with exactly the right knowledge, to finally recognize them for the magnificent, life-transforming, history-making wonders they truly and completely and forever are.